a coach teaching a semi-private lesson or a private lesson through the gym for the gym is no different than that coach teaching a class. What happens when those private lessons don't get booked? They get paid because they're here and they are on the clock. Paying your coaches an incredibly low wage and then letting them make up for it in private lessons is not doing right by your employees. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Cheer Biz Podcast. Today, we are diving back into the concept of private lessons and coaches' pay, and the fact that giving your coaches 100% of their private lessons is not actually taking good care of your coaches. This episode was inspired because this came up again on ASGA. Someone had asked about how coaches were compensated, and it led to a number of responses, which the great thing is that compared to maybe 5 years ago, more and more people were starting to chime in with at least some version of the right way or closer to the right way of doing things and against what the industry standard has been so long. But there were so many people, to include coaches, chiming in about what they believed the right way was, and the right way being the industry standard of coaches taking 100% of their private lesson or almost 100% of their private lessons that they do and booking it themselves and all of this other chaos. I have already done episodes on the legal risks of it. So if you haven't listened to my episode with Matt Becker, please go and listen to that episode if you have curiosity on this. If you're a coach listening to this, though, I'm not going to appeal to the legal aspect of it because it's very easy to say, well, there's legal risks, and it's easy to go, well, that's not going to happen to me. And someone even commented that everyone always says it's not going to happen to me right before it does. But I get it. I 100% get it. And I also get, if you're a coach who is trying to make cheerleading your living, that oftentimes private lessons are a way to sustain that, especially the way many gyms are set up. I, however, don't think it is the right way to take care of my coaches. I'll walk through kind of what my policy is really quick in terms of private lessons and how things work in my facility. And then I will go into why I don't think that giving coaches 100% of their private lessons is doing the right thing and actually taking good care of your coaches. So number one, when we talk about like what I do, so we made this change a number of years ago, I think 5, maybe 6 years ago, we switched from coaches just being able to set their own private lessons and, keep 100% of their privates and just do whatever you kind of want to do. Just we'll stay out of it. And that was not the right way to do it. And we transitioned to, we are going to book your private lessons through the gym. You're going to offer a certain number based upon what you want to do. We do ask our staff, hey, how many private lessons do you want to offer? How many extra hours do you want in your schedule? And for us, our coaches are compensated at their normal hourly wage. And that is because I'm going to give you my opinion as a coach. And I've been coaching for over 20 years. A private lesson is not harder than a class. In fact, in a lot of ways, it's easier. I generally have to spot less. I can give more focused attention. Even though we do semi-privates, it's still, generally speaking, easier than running a class with 10 or 12 people in it because that takes a lot more energy and a lot more input. And so for me, coaching a private lesson is actually easier. So that's one factor there. So we have our coaches get paid their hourly rate. Now we have implemented a bonus structure where based off of the private lessons that actually are booked, they get a percentage of a bonus for those private lessons being booked. Now, the great thing for the staff is if they say, and we accept, I'm willing to offer 15 hours in my schedule to do private lessons at my hourly rate. What happens when those private lessons don't get booked? They get paid because they're here and they are on the clock. And if those private lessons, so if they get booked, they get paid. If they don't get booked, they get paid. And they get a reliable, consistent income. And we then can sell that block of time that is a semi-private lesson for us. And we can sell that and we can compensate the coach and the business can take its share, et cetera, et cetera. Now, some people would say, well, what do you do, Dan? Like, you're the gym owner. Everyone pays the gym. Yeah, it's the same. I treat myself the same. I could not, but I don't. I am treated the exact same. Tori is treated the exact same. And we book a decent amount of private lessons and people pay the gym directly. And that is that. And it works very well for our gym. It adds additional revenue to the gym. It helps give coaches a consistent paycheck so they can actually rely on making X amount of dollars each month, whether they are an employee who gets salary for coaching a team and then they have additional private lesson hours that they offer. There's a number of different ways that they can do it, but they, generally speaking, know what their paycheck is going to be every single month. And they don't have to worry about filling their private lessons. Now, we have a side rule in our gym, which is if you are willing to work 15 hours or more per week for the gym, which means we pay you, but you're willing to commit at least 15 hours, and it's closer to 20 now. So you're basically a part-time employee committing a certain number of hours to the gym and the gym bringing in revenue, then we will allow you to do private lessons in our off hours that don't go through the gym. But our caveat is you have to have a registered LLC. We have to have a indemnification for the gym. You have to have a waiver and you have to be carrying insurance, which is the same thing we would do if someone were to come in and rent our gym. We would say, okay, we need a proof of your insurance. We need to be indemnified. You need to have your own waivers and they still need to fill out our waiver. And we're going to have some sort of an agreement. So our coaches are allowed to do that, and they're allowed to do it in our non-standard business hours, which is basically prior to 4 p.m. for our classes or for our schedule on Monday through Friday. And then Saturdays, it's a pretty limited window. And then Sundays is pretty much open all day because we don't offer classes or anything of that sort. So there are options for coaches to run a side business, and that is a perk we offer in my gym. But they have to meet all those criteria because they are running a business. And again, go back and listen to the legal episode that we did with Matt Becker. But ultimately, if you're running private lessons and people are paying you directly and they're not paying the gym, then you are running a side business. And I do not think you're doing it the right way. You're exposed to a lot of liability. If you don't have insurance and you don't have a registered company, you should have an LLC. Like, I want to make sure that they're doing things the right way. So getting into my reasons of why this isn't taking good care of your coaches. So number one, in order to do right by your coaches, you need to keep the gym open and the gym needs to make a profit. That becomes very, very hard when you cannot bring in additional revenue. And so this is one way to bring in additional revenue. And it's no different than, in my mind, it is no different. A coach teaching a semi-private lesson or a private lesson through the gym for the gym is no different than that coach teaching a class. It is the same thing. It's no different than I'm coaching a team, teaching a class, running a stunt session. It is no different. I don't treat them any differently in my gym, and I truly believe that it should stay that way. And in order for the gym to stay open, you have to bring in revenue. So ultimately, I've got to make sure that I'm doing right by the business first, so I can stay open, so I can continue to offer my employees jobs, because they won't have a job if the gym isn't open. And gyms are really, really expensive. So just going into the whole like, oh, well, if you take a little cut, okay, well, if I take $10 from every private lesson, like $10 doesn't even pay for the lights to be on for an hour in my gym. Like it doesn't even cover it. It is like drop in the bucket towards all of the other overhead and expenses and things like that. And as a coach, the luxury you have as a coach is you don't have to buy the equipment. You don't have to pay the rent. You don't have to pay the electric bill. You don't have to maintenance the equipment. You don't have to get toilet paper. You don't have to pay the water bill or any of those other things. Like, the amount of expenses there are to running a business is significant, no matter where you are. And even the equipment itself is incredibly expensive. One spring floor right now, I think, is around $35,000 landed, like in your gym, shipping included, and you get it assembled. That's going to cost you around 35 grand with 9 mats. Just the spring floor. A tumble track, you've got a significant cost there, and maybe you get it used. But again, these things are really expensive, and they need to bring money back in to pay for the expense. And that happens over a long period of time. So let's say a coach is just using my facility and they're paying me $10 a month, and I want to pay off my tumble track that cost me $12,000 by the time I got it here, because shipping is really expensive. So using my tumble track, well, how many private lessons are they going to need to do at $10 a pop to recoup the cost of even just the singular tumble track? Now, I know it's not that binary, but there are so many expenses that need to get covered, and bringing in $10 here and $10 there for a private lesson from the coaches is really not efficient. The issue is, in my mind, when a lot of people look at this from the coach's perspective, is they say, well, the gym's taking this huge amount, and ergo, that means that the business owner is taking that huge amount. And it's not that in like 99.99% of gyms I've ever seen. I've actually never seen a gym where gym owners are taking a portion of private lessons or a significant portion of private lessons. And then those gym owners, like that is really what's paying themselves significantly well. Like that's just not the case. And the industry standard, unfortunately, is most gym owners are paying themselves less than $2,000 a month in actual take-home pay. So that is more common than not in this industry. Now, there's certainly the outliers and the people who get paid very well. And ultimately, my goal in coaching business owners is to help them bring in more revenue so they can pay themselves and enrich their lives, and that they can pay their employees a fair and living wage. And this can actually be a real career, which brings me to my number 2 point, which is paying your coaches an incredibly low wage and then letting them make up for it in private lessons is not doing right by your employees. So if I have an employee and I say, oh, I'm going to pay you the lowest possible wage I can get away with, legally speaking, which varies from state to state, but I'm going to pay you the lowest possible wage I can for the hours that you're working. And then on top of that, I'm going to have you work, 20 or 25 or even 30 hours in a week, maybe less, but I'm going to utilize the majority of your hours in the evenings. Then if you want to make extra money, you can keep 100% of it, but you can hustle and do private lessons. And what does that turn into? That turns into a situation where your coaches are not getting compensated very well for what they're doing within the business and helping the business drive forward. And then on top of that, so not getting compensated well, and then you're throwing them the bone and saying, if you hustle really, really hard and work tons of hours and toss people or do all these other things, then you can make extra money. And I just don't like that as a look. I think it is, it's not doing right by your employees. I think to do right by your employees, it's actually better to pay them a higher wage and give them lots of hours, guaranteed, consistent hours that they know they're going to be working, and fill those hours with things that generate revenue for the business so you can offset their payroll and pay them at more than just a like marginal rate. Now, do I have employees that are at minimum wage within my business? Yes, I do. My minimum wage is closer to $16, but for the most part, no one is there. And so even if you look at, they get paid their hourly rate. Well, my coaches get paid a decent hourly rate. So if they are booking one private lesson in their semi-private class, then they really are getting 50% of that private lesson. If they're getting paid a decent rate, they're actually getting a pretty good chunk of it. So it just depends on the coach. And again, that is standard practice in any business, in any company. You're going to negotiate your wages, and having consistent pay is much better than having to hustle. Plus, if you're giving your coaches a really low wage, especially if they're hourly, then in the months where you're closed for the holidays or you have less things going on, there's all sorts of problems there, because now it's December and we close down for 2 weeks because of the holidays. And so you don't get your hours, so you get no pay. And then you got to hustle and try and book private lessons. But most people don't book private lessons during the holidays because they're off and vacationing and doing those things that are not at the gym. So now they're scraping by at a hard time of the year. And then you get into competition season and coaches can't do private lessons on the weekends because they're at competitions. And so they can't make as much money. So it impacts them negatively. And I just want to take out those variables. Now, I'm not saying I don't want coaches to hustle and I don't want coaches to have side businesses. I do. I fully support it. And if anyone who's ever worked for me can tell you that I truly try to invest in helping my employees seek out their dreams. So whether that is helping them figure out how to start an LLC or how to launch their music company or get involved in choreography, I really, really try to support my staff and help them get to where they want to be, utilizing the knowledge and the experience and the understandings that I have. So I want to take good care of my coaches through their standard pay. And if you're only able to compensate your employees a low rate, and you have to offset it by allowing them to keep 100% of their privates, then there's something additionally wrong with the health of your business. And it's something you need to drill down into. And I'm not sitting up here on my high horse and saying, you're wrong and how dare you, because I was there. I've made that mistake. There were things wrong that I had to fix within my business from a revenue perspective. I had to fix some expenses. I had to fix some things. I had to bring in more revenue. I had to build my class program. I had to build diverse revenue streams. I had to do all of those things so I could get to the point where I was. And one of those revenue streams is private lessons. Bringing them within in-house is great. One of the other comments that was made in this group was, that's for your coaches to figure out with the IRS. It's none of your business. And here's where I'm going to disagree. Allowing my coaches to expose themselves to extreme liability just so I can pay them less money is not doing right by them. So if I'm having them expose themselves to liability and issues potentially with the IRS and audits and owing taxes and things like that, I am not doing right by my employees. That's not good. And I will tell you, so this might sound braggadocious. It's not meant to. With Dream Camps, for years, I paid all of my employees, all my people who worked camps as contractors. And that logically made sense. It was easy. We didn't have to do all of the craziness, and we paid them out as contractors, and because they picked what camps they wanted to work, and then they would work that camp, and then I just pay them out. And I did that for years, and it was fine. It was legal, although now there's been some shifts, and there's some things that we do within Dream Camps that shifted it a little bit to make it so I think it's better the other way. But ultimately, I made all of my staff employees last year. And that was like the first year I did everyone. I started working on it the year before, but every single person became a true employee last year. I only had 1 or 2 people who did work as contractors. Everyone else was an employee. This actually was bad for me because I had to pay for workers' compensation insurance, which is really expensive in Cheer. I had to pay for all of the state taxes. I have pay Social Security, federal, all of those taxes, all of those expenses I had to offer and was happy to offer retirement plans. So contributions and matching and all of those other things. I had to offer all that stuff, which actually adds a lot of expense. If you're at a gym where you're offered retirement plan, you're offered any sort of insurance benefits or anything like that, those things are really expensive. They're an expensive add-on. And to do that, it costs significant money. And I did this though, because I felt bad for my employees. Yes, they made a lot of money in the summer, but then they would come tax season and they'd be like, hey, you sent me my W-2 and it looks like I'm going to owe $2,000 on my taxes because I made a bunch of money last year and I didn't pay any taxes because you paid me as a 1099. And the pay rate that you have to save is 30% or more if you're a 1099 employee. You need to be prepared for that. And they weren't. And these are college students. They're like, man, this really sucks that I owe money and I don't have it. And it was putting my coaches in a bad way. And the same thing applies if they're, having private lessons come into them. And there's 2 options: are they don't report them, or there's 3. They don't report them and they hope that it never gets to the IRS. But the IRS has done more and more to track Venmo and track those things. So they report transactions if people make more than $600 from a singular transaction, those kind of things. And so they track those things. You're going to have to explain them on your taxes. That exposes that they're either going to not report it or they're going to report it and owe taxes on it and probably be in a bad way because they didn't save. Or the last one is they do everything right and they put aside at least 30% into an account and they're ready for their taxes and they do all it that way. I don't think that is doing right by my employees to give them that extra stress. I want to make sure that they are set up for success. And by keeping everything within the business, I'm actually doing more right by my employees. Yes, they may make a little less money ultimately. Yes, there are certain coaches out there who can hustle their buns off and they are great coaches and they can fill up their private lessons. And I get it. There was a period of time where I did it. I paid the bills by doing private lessons. I was at a gym where they just said, hey, if it's during the day, you can run whatever you want. It's just not during times that you're normally working. And so I would do private lessons starting at 2:00 and I'd make an extra $2,000 a month, which paid for my rent. It paid for my bills. But I also was only making $600 a month from the gym. So I really wasn't making anything to get by. And it helped. I get it. And there are good coaches out there who can do that, but it's not the right way to take care of them. There's just better ways to take care of your coaches and set them up for success. So as we step out of this conversation, and this may be the last time I talk about it on the pod, at least for a little while, because I've said everything I need to say. And if I haven't convinced you, it's fine. You can do whatever you want. I'm just telling you the most efficient way that I've found and that we found across the industry to run private lessons. You have to find what works for you. Am I saying you have to pay your coaches their hourly rate? No, I'm not. You could pay them more if you wanted to. If you wanted to make private lessons an incentive, you could pay them $25 an hour or $30 an hour. You can pay them whatever you want. But you need to make sure that the business is succeeding and the business is making money. Ultimately, there were some people who said that, everything comes through the gym, but they just pay the coaches out 100%. I think that is an error, because if it's coming into the gym, you're probably paying processing fees and transaction fees and things like that. So you're actually losing money on the deal. So you should at the very least be recouping those costs if they're coming in through like iClass or credit cards or anything like that. Like, you are paying processing fees. So you should be at least recouping that. But if you pay your coaches a really great wage, then they're much more likely to be willing to do private lessons within the context of the gym. And when you get people who are all aligned on those values, your gym's going to be succeeding. Now, if you don't care about that and that's not important to you, that's totally fine. There was a coach who said, this is a deal breaker for me, and I would never take a job where I didn't get to keep 100% of my privates. And you know what? I disagree with you, but I totally respect you. Like, mad respect. If that's your deal breaker, then find the right place for you that matches that approach and go for it. Like, I respect hustle. So if that's what you want to do and that's a deal breaker, that's totally fine. I've actually interviewed people and I've explained our private lesson policy, and they've been like, that doesn't really work for me. And I said, I totally respect that. You're a great coach. Good luck. I hope you find somewhere that suits you. That's what a interview and deciding to be in a relationship as an employer and employee is. This is who we are. This is our culture. This is our identity. This is the way we do things. Do you fit within that? Do you want to be a part of that? And if they do, great. And if they don't, fine. Like, that's okay. There's quite literally the vast majority of the world out there never wanted to date you as a human being. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you or that there's anything wrong with them. That just meant that you weren't simpatico. You weren't meant to go together. And that's okay from a business perspective too. There are people who are just not right for your business, and your business isn't right for them. And that's a-okay. We don't all have to do it the same way. But what we do have to do is we have to make sure that we're running our businesses effectively and we're taking good care of our coaches. That's it. Like, we have to run a great business. And if we run a great business, we can take care of our staff. And taking care of your staff is something you should care about. And honestly, almost every gym owner I've ever talked to cares about it. They truly care about taking care of their people, because most of us were staff at one point and we get it. We want to take care of you. We want to do right by our employees. Oftentimes, if you're in that position where you have a gym that can't afford to pay you more, that means that they need help. That means that they need to bring in more revenue. And you only coaching private lessons and being unwilling to coach classes doesn't bring in more revenue. This was another reason we went this way, was we had coaches who were like, well, our best coaches who were like, no, I can't coach those classes. They interfere with my private lessons. Okay, but your private lessons don't bring in any money to the business. So now I'm just paying you a salary. You're not coaching any classes, and then you're just working and collecting privates and unavailable. Like, that's an untenable situation. It can't last. And so you need to, if you're going to be pushing to keep 100% of your private lessons, then I would tell you, as a, just a piece of advice as a coach, owner to a coach, be willing to do whatever it takes to grow that business and keep that business moving forward. Be willing to coach classes, make some sacrifices, restructure those things so you can do those private lessons at another time, because you won't have a place to do private lessons if the business can't pay the bills. That's it. End of discussion. Okay. Now, maybe you start your own business and then go for it. Like, I know coaches who've gone on to start gyms where they focus on just doing classes and private lessons, and they do really well. So if you want to take that on and you want to build a business like that, then like, more power to you. I'll have your back 100%. I love entrepreneurship. I don't think everyone should be an entrepreneur. I don't think everyone should be a business owner. But if you are, do it right. Learn it, do it right. I didn't know how to do it at first, and I got a lot better at it. I'm getting better every day. I actually just got back from a workshop where I was learning how to be a better business owner. So partially why I'm so fired up right now. As we step away from the podcast, I hope you got something out of it. The ultimate message is take care of your business, take care of your coaches correctly. And I don't think that having your coaches have to hustle and do all that stuff and having them keep 100% of their private lessons is doing right by your employees, for all the reasons I've listed. So find what works for you, find what works right in your business. And if you need help, reach out. If you haven't heard yet, make sure you get to our conference in Las Vegas in early January. It's going to be fantastic. Really excited to see you guys there. And with that, we'll catch you on the next episode.